Welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered, the first episode of Getting Hammered in the year 2024. I cannot believe it's 2024. That 4 years really flew by since 2020. I think 2020 is like yesterday. It was not yesterday, guys. But we are back, and we got a lot to discuss today because a lot is going on. We've got some really, really good Now It Can Be Tolds. We've got some Israel news, an update from Argentina, our libertarian, wild-haired new president friend who we want to hear more about. And we're going to end the show with Pizza Hut and Pop-Tart news, which I know Vic is going to love. So before we get to that, how are you doing, Vic, my co-host who works at the Washington Free Beacon?
Hello, Mary Katharine. Doing fine. Continue to be on the mend. Happy New Year to you. I'm going to save our Happy New Year chit-chat for our very special Happy New Year episode later this week. I hope our listeners enjoyed the week off. I hope they survived the withdrawal.
Yeah, I did not enjoy
the
week
and there
off.
was a reason. We actually, our listeners should know that we actually intended to do an extra episode, and then poor Mary Katharine.
I got very sick. The thing is, I don't get sick that often, but when I fall hard.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
Mom's standing for a long, long time, for months and months. I'm like, I'm good. Wow, I'm surprised I'm so good. And then 3 days before we're supposed to leave for Christmas, flu for Mom.
You know what's funny? Because in that previous episode, you talked about, we just power through.
I know.
Even though we're sick, we're going to go
I'm over here giving Jennifer and Vic the flu. I actually didn't. We don't sit close enough together.
No,
it's
it's amazing. No, we have our social distancing here. This is it. I'll tell you what was nice over break. Apparently, a lot of families, a lot of young people, they don't watch TV anymore like regular channels. They're just all streaming now, which is, I guess they don't have to pay the $500 a month to Verizon the way we do for, a billion channels. And we only watch 3 channels. No, we don't pay that much, but still, it's a lot. And flipping through, though, because it's what we're used to, there was a lot of great content on.
Yeah.
Like classic movies, our favorites. And I have to tell you one that was on. And it was revelatory because I'd seen it enough times. And for some reason, I didn't remember it in its full glory because it was on IFC, which does not censor anything.
Okay.
On the Independent Film Channel. You're going to be surprised by this one. You're going to be surprised, Mary
Is this a holiday-appropriate film? I don't think so.
Ready for this?
Yeah.
Doc Hollywood with Michael J. Fox.
Yeah. I remember that movie.
Okay, yes. And I saw it in the theater. For some reason, I didn't remember this at the time. So for people who aren't familiar, this movie came out in 1991, so a full 6 years after Back to the Future. He's a big star, and it's your classic sort of Michael J. Fox is this New York City doctor, and he's going to L.A. to work for the plastic surgeon. He's, hip and, up and coming and edgy, and then his car gets his car totaled while driving through. For some reason, he just a small town outside Athens, Georgia.
Oh, was it really?
Because they keep on talking about Athens General.
Oh.
So he's out
now
there.
Now I have to rewatch.
And it's the whole thing about Mr. City Sophisticate having to actually learn a few things, including good values and character from the local country bumpkins.
Indeed.
And it stars Woody Harrelson's in it and Bridget Fonda's in it. But I'll tell you who the true star in this movie was.
Who's that?
Her name is Julie Warner, and her name is Lou in the movie. She plays the love interest for Michael J.
I was
Fox.
just wondering who it was. I was in my head.
Dark
it was like a Nancy
olive
Travis
skinned.
situation, but no,
Yes,
that's incorrect.
she's very attractive.
Okay.
Has a southern drawl. She has a secret, which is she has a daughter, but no father. So this is a thing.
Scandalo.
And here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching with Kate, and she remembered it, and I didn't. Early on in the movie, Michael J. Fox has the old lady's given this blanket, and it's the whatever I call it, like who you'll meet. You'll have a dream about the woman you'll meet, the woman of your dreams, if you have the blanket on and fall asleep. And he has this vision. It's a silhouette of Julie Warner, Lou, on the lake behind his house, going for a skinny dip.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a silhouette. So then the next morning he comes outside, goes towards the lake, and there's Julie Warner completely naked.
What?
That's what I'm gonna. Yeah, she's at a distance. Okay, so she's at a distance, so she's far. So, but if you looked up, if you were to, if you like the teenage me,
If you were to get
or
up close to that
right
TV.
up there, your nose is almost getting the static from the TV. It's tickling your nose, and then he's like, well, what's this? What's happening? Right, and trying to act cool, and she is unabashed, and she walks up, and now when she walks up, you don't see everything, but she's topless.
Wow.
In Doc Hollywood, she's fully, and not for a brief second, but for a while, trying to have a normal conversation and testing his reaction. Now here's what's crazy.
She's a mother.
She's a mother, and he's like, I'm a doctor, and he does this typical Michael J. Fox. I'm a doctor, and she's like, yeah, I heard, so I guess you're used to this, and she's like, you can blink now, and kind of funny. Here's the crazy thing.
Movies were different.
Ready
back
for
then,
this,
guys?
That movie was PG-13.
Yep.
A 13-year-old could see the full. I was amazed.
I watched that movie for sure with my parents, and I would have been like 12 years old, for sure.
Probably like,
and it was a VHS, so I know it wasn't censored.
Oh my goodness!
It was rented.
And you know why we don't really remember it? Because it was normal
It was
back
normal.
then. And so everyone talks about.
It's true.
So you know how everyone talks. We need to go back to a more wholesome time.
Yeah.
And I think they're right.
It wasn't that time.
No, we need to go back to 1991. Is what I'm saying. To return to those values, Mary Katharine. That's what we need.
So we had an issue with Christmas Vacation.
Oh.
Because there's a scene in Christmas Vacation where he's looking out the window and imagining
yes
a nude situation.
Right.
And I didn't remember this from Christmas Vacation because that was normal when I was a child.
And also, depending on where you're watching it on TV, if it's on one of the other cable channels, they might
of course, they would
censor
cut
it.
that
They'll
out,
cut that
right?
out.
So I had forgotten about this, and then this is like several years ago, and then I sent my kids off to school, and one of them, in a journal entry at school, wrote about how she saw this on the TV at home. And her teacher sends it back with a note that's like, this is inappropriate. I was like, well, that movie probably was inappropriate, and I did not remember that it was. So my apologies. I thought it was just a comedic romp.
Again,
without
it's
nudity.
Like the 80s / early 90s. Totally acceptable.
It was like being raised around fine art paintings.
No,
you just saw nudes wherever you looked.
You just beat me to it. If you go to the museum, you look at the Impressionists. It's art. Why is this not art?
As far as I'm concerned, it is and was.
Thank you. Gustave Courbet's, I believe it's the mother of the universe or origin of the universe. That one is
okay. That one you're up close on that one too.
That's a classic. Mm-hmm. You might want to stay away further back. It was really kind of graphic, and that's art. Okay.
Okay. So
how are you?
I'm good. We were sort of like marching sickly through Christmas. It was.
Did you say you were the last one in your family to get the illness? Or?
Yeah, We had a rough run, sort of November through December.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking I was going to fall at any moment, and it took a long time. And unfortunately, the time that it decided to do it was about like the 20th of December. So what I did was I spent several days in bed and just very chilled out to try to recuperate so that we could get to North Carolina to see the families. And I did get better-ish, enough that I'm not feverish,
Good.
I don't feel
That's
like
the first thing.
I don't feel like I'm passing anything on. Like I just feel kind of cruddy.
Yeah.
And that's like
You
Christmas
gotta drain
crud.
your systems.
Christmas crud is normal, right? You can. These are not COVID times anymore. You can go outside your house when you're like that. So, I took a couple days, and everyone else is kind of equally coffee, cruddy. It is what it is.
A lot of nose blowing.
We had one of the kids checked for an ear infection before we left. I was being very proactive.
Yes.
Thinking, we'll get her on the like a good mother, I'm hoping for an ear infection so we can just put the chick on antibiotics and then move on with our lives. Wouldn't you know it? Hit the lotto wrong this time. No ear infection, just fluid on the ear. So they can't give us anything. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll see you back here in a week and a half when we have ear infections. And we did.
No. I didn't know ear infection's contagious.
No, it's not.
Oh.
It's not.
Sorry, we did.
No, I just meant when her ears are infected eventually.
Yeah, of course.
Which they, of course, became.
Okay.
I, in fact, sent a little note to her teacher, just said, like, she's fine, but if she's acting like she's ignoring you, it's her ears.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's a double ear infection. That's being cured. She's on medicine now. Anyway, so we kind of limped through. And in our great wisdom with our 4 children and our dog, we decided to go to not 1 but 2 Christmas locales.
Well, your families.
Well, but normally our families are close together. This year, down to Durham, which is, right over the border in North Carolina, with my family for a couple days, and then over to the beach for a little sojourn.
Oh.
Sojourn. Where Steve's parents were.
Oh.
Which was lovely, but would have been
that?
much lovelier had it not been 3 hours away and we were sick. But I gotta say, once we got there, very relaxing.
That's a long stretch. 3 hours?
Yeah.
Oh, they were like Outer Banks or
Yeah,
something?
yeah.
Oh.
Out to the coast. But beautiful place.
Yeah.
Lovely
I'm sure.
time. And then made the road trip back. And now we're just kind of slowly putting ourselves back together.
It's almost like a come down. People who have been on substances will explain.
Mm-hmm.
There's this come to withdrawal afterwards, and this is not that I'm just saying.
Right, you wouldn't know.
No, I wouldn't know. But I mean, it's sort of okay. And you almost feel sickly in a weird way because, and I'll tell you something else, and this is Kate's theory, which is she doesn't get sick when she can't get sick. And then when you finally let your guard down, everybody's better now. Whoosh,
I believe that's a sort of a at least pseudoscientific thing where it'll come for you when you're like when the pressure has passed and then you gotta your body can allow it.
Yes. Yeah.
So anyway, we made it through, and on the movie front, I do want to say, we watched A Christmas Story I think on Christmas Day. Because it's 24 hours. It runs for
Gene
24
Shepard's Christmas Story,
I love that movie.
I'm the only one in my family who likes that movie.
Okay.
My whole family hates it.
This is what I was going to ask, just for your brief take on it, because I know it's a bit controversial.
Yeah.
And some people...
I was surprised it was because it's a classic.
Really dislike it. And
my house.
I find it hilarious and charming and well-written and nostalgic and sweet. And some people are like, this is the most mean-spirited movie I've ever seen. I don't get it.
Well, yeah, and of course, people are also offended by the ending. They go to the Chinese restaurant.
So it is mildly problematic for 1940 setting, but
also, and I laughed. I thought it was funny.
Yeah. Okay, and you're allowed.
I'm allowed. My whole family thought that was funny.
When you say your family, you mean your kids and your wife don't like it?
Yes.
What do they not like about it?
I think it's too loud and obnoxious. It's like too much going on, which is weird because
I object to this.
Yeah, I do too, and I don't understand because there are so many funny moments in this movie.
Yes,
and not it's not just there are a lot of antics too. But I mean, your husband made a comment to me the other day when he brought this thing over that I'll talk about on the next episode, and it said fragile on it, and he said fragile. And I said, oh, it must be Italian, because that's what the father says. The lampshade, the famous fishnet stocking lampshade.
Yes.
And
my kids were like, why does she not want to put that in the window? I was like, I'll explain it later, girls.
It's classy. And drink your Ovaltine, the decoder.
I find it hilarious. Also, there are just great sentences in it because it came from a short story or a novella. Yeah. And they're just, in the narration, there's fantastic writing. And I don't think my father will be deeply offended by saying that the father sometimes reminds me of my father. Particularly this sentence, which is, my father worked in profanity the way other artists might work in oils or clay. It was his true medium, a master. And that one really hit home for me. I love it. It is perhaps what my children will say about me one day.
One day. Come on, already. No, where he's changing the tires and the lug nuts, and he drops the lug nuts into the snow. I mean, that's all right.
Anyway. Well, as usual, we're in agreement and correct. Okay. Shall we move on to the news?
Let's do it.
I had to put this first today, even though there's so much going on. This Now It Can Be Told from Francis Collins, former head of the NIH during the COVID years, is a humdinger, Vic.
Yeah.
It's a humdinger. So let me play this first clip. Now, this is from a gathering of Braver Angels, which is a nonprofit group that I like their mission. They try to get people from opposite sides of the aisle to sit down and talk about tough things. Okay. And to it's called Braver Angels because obviously that can be very hard to do.
Yes.
And so I want to commend Collins for being part of that gathering.
Sure. It's a big deal for the revelation.
Well, it is an attempt to confront different ideas, which is what he talks about doing here. And one of the issues that Collins says they had in 2020 is that they didn't confront other ideas. So let's hear him explain how that went down. Do you have that?
As a guy living inside the Beltway, feeling the sense of crisis, trying to decide what to do in some situation room in the White House with people who had data that was incomplete, we weren't really thinking about what that would mean to Wilk and his family in Minnesota, 1,000 miles away from where the virus was hitting so hard. We weren't really considering the consequences in communities that were not New York City or some other big city. The public health people, we talked about this earlier, and this is a really important point. If you're a public health person and you're trying to make a decision, you have this very narrow view of what the right decision is, and that is something that will save a life. Doesn't matter what else happens. So you attach infinite value to stopping the disease and saving a life. You attach a zero value to whether this actually totally disrupts people's lives, ruins the economy, and has many kids kept out of school in a way that they never quite recover
Collateral
from.
damage.
So collateral damage. This is a public health mindset, and I think a lot of us involved in trying to make those recommendations had that mindset, and that was really unfortunate. It's another mistake we made.
Okay.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. There's a lot there, Vic.
It helps to slow roll the mea culpa when you're no longer in office, because I feel like that's something he probably couldn't admit to or fess up to while he was running things.
Right.
He could have done worse in the sense, in terms of his mea culpa, not in terms of his policy.
Yeah.
He could have done worse had he gone full Gavin Newsom and said, we just need a little ounce of humility, and we're asking for forgiveness and a little understanding about the position that we were in at the time. We were trying to do our best, so let's just move on. So he's willing to at least admit that this was a problem, but it does bring up two things.
Yeah.
For me. One, and he doesn't address this, I guess, is the issue of censorship of other people's opinions that say, hey, maybe this isn't a good idea.
Oh, we have another clip that is that has a little bit on that, but go ahead and I'll play it for you.
So censorship is one thing, and you think about the Great Barrington Declaration, right? Which was extremely commonsensical, which is funny to say that, extremely commonsensical. But for those who are vulnerable in our community, protect them.
Yeah.
And the rest of us can power through this, either with a vaccine at the time or with your natural young antibodies and immunity that will get you through, as it has most of us gotten. We have gotten through this now, with or without the vaccine. If you are healthy, the vast majority of us, without having to stifle dissent on things like social media. And then the other thing that is implied by Francis Collins' explanation is the pressure to rely on health and science advisors as the actual makers of policy, instead of the politicians, because politicians aren't doctors. What do they know? What they know, of course, is the big picture and how this affects. It's much more profound. He's right. They're just concerned with physical life. They're not thinking about the setbacks, psychological or otherwise, or even
one of the points of the Great Barrington Declaration was to declare, hey, maybe we should think about these other things, right? And Collins was among those who, along with Fauci, conspired to some degree to smear those people because they wanted to have that conversation. Now, I know they all, not Collins in particular, but just like the crowd of zero COVID folks will gaslight you and tell you, oh, no, like there was definitely no smearing of these people. It was active. It was very punitive. They tried to ruin their careers and to make this just a non-debatable issue.
And you also know this firsthand, because I remember you getting attacked for, offering up the suggestion, get back to schools. What are you trying to do? Kill us?
This was the thing. Or my friend Bethany Mandel famously trended for being a grandma killer because she said maybe we should go to museums and orchestra performances and stuff, because if we don't for 2 years, then they will not exist at the end of this. And everyone was like, how dare you?
How dare you?
The other thing about this is that I understand that obviously a public health official is going to be more myopic about a disease and health than others would be. But what he says here about a narrow view about just one area of the country where the virus is hitting hard, saving life is all that matters to them, assigning infinite value to that part of the equation while assigning zero value to disruptions elsewhere.
Yeah.
This is the way a child thinks.
Yeah.
This is not the way
true.
an adult thinks. That's what I find most disturbing about this, because if this is truly the way they made decisions, you've rigged the whole game to say that, well, infinite value is what I assign to the interventions that I want to heavy-handedly
and everything
give
else
to all the American people. Anything we disrupt has zero value. Well, that's great. That means you win every argument by default, which is how they rigged the game the whole time. But I am disturbed that if that is, quote, the public health mentality, I don't want to have public health servants telling anyone anything, because they are thinking like my toddler. My toddler assigns infinite value to whatever it is she wants in the moment, and zero value to what the rest of the family is doing because she's 2. Like, he seems like a nice enough man in this, right? Like, I don't want to be like, I find him less problematic than Fauci, because at least he is reckoning a bit with this.
Right. Fauci was more of an egomaniac.
Well, and Fauci's just like, everything we did was awesome. Shut the hell up.
Right.
I still think I'm awesome.
I am the
science. Collins, and I don't want to punish Collins because we too often punish this versus the Faucis of the world. And Fauci has advantages because he's just completely shameless.
Yeah. And Fauci has never gone as far as Francis Collins in saying what Francis Collins said. Yeah.
But this is like an infantile mindset. And I just want to say that if this is the public health mindset, then maybe you and I should be in charge of public health, because we have the ability to consider more than one thing at a time.
I did take AP Bio in high school. I scored a 2. Anyway.
Okay, so what I wanted to share with you about censorship is this little clip where Collins seems to... Now, this clip makes me a little more annoyed. He seems to... Maybe these are just statements of fact, but he seems to bemoan this. Here we go. He's talking about the difference between the U.S. and China and its response and the societal response to the response.
China didn't have a problem with politicians disagreeing with the leadership, nor did they have a media problem, but we sure had every possible voice, many of them with all kinds of intentions that were not noble, ready to capitalize on a circumstance where there was uncertainty and resentment and anger and fear, and whip that up in the biggest way.
Wow. Yeah,
my dude.
No one, the advantage that China had is no one was there to stop them from soldering the walls and welding people in to soldering the doors rather than welding people into their homes so they can't leave. Unfortunately, we didn't have that ability in this country to lock people in forever.
Now, this is a thing that
we can just drop off a little food.
This is a thing that public officials should try not to do.
Yeah.
Which is like publicly envying totalitarian regimes for their powers.
Yeah, saying the quiet part out loud.
Sure. You didn't have a quote media problem. In China.
You mean the questioning?
I'd argue in the U.S. you didn't have much of a media problem because they were all happily falling in line with you.
What's he thinking about?
I think he's thinking about like Jay Bhattacharya.
Yeah.
Was that the media
Marty
problem?
McCary.
Yeah. So the idea that he's bemoaning the very little dissent that did break through, and he's assigning the resentment and the loss of public trust to the critics that they caused the problem.
Right.
When in fact, now there are people who are bad actors, of course, but a lot of, I would say the vast majority of the public trust problem came from public officials having the infantile mindset we discussed and not allowing a discussion about these things because they were busy envying China's lack of problems with dissent.
Right. And the ability to speak. Do you remember people screaming and going insane in places like in China where they couldn't take it anymore?
Yes.
I mean, people lost their minds.
Yeah.
It's also, for anyone running for office, it really is worth reminding people the insanity of some of those policies, even if you want to go down to the local level, in places. For example, I remember in California where people going to the beach to watch a sunset were fined. They were ticketed for leaving their house.
I mean,
we forget this. I think in many ways we want to forget it because it was so horrible.
No, I think.
But I remember I was just thinking about this the other day. Now that I can go back on my walks as my sciatica gets better.
There you go.
And you pass other runners and whoever. And I remember a woman running not even near me. And as she got close, she immediately covered her mouth and breath because she was scared that I was going to give her.
I mean, to be fair, if it's me, you probably should be scared since I was
definitely
wantonly.
Yeah, no, you Typhoid Mary over here. But for the rest of us, it was always this assumption that you do have the code with you. You do have it.
Yeah,
you know, it's not the, if you take it off, you might. No, it was. And even in this building where we are, all the little stickers and signs that say to walk this way and not that way, where to stand in the elevator. It's maddening.
And every time we have one of these viral moments where a public official does sort of confront this a bit, you get a round of Twitter nonsense about how there really were no measures and what are you people complaining about?
Yeah.
Which is insanity.
Yeah.
It's insanity because I wasn't even in New York or LA. Right. I was in Northern Virginia, and a neighbor on Easter of 2020 threatened to call the police on a gathering of Easter egg hunting children with their parents because there were 12 of us, not 10.
Yeah.
Now,
they counted.
That would have been pre-COVID, just an insane neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
But during COVID, that was an actionable offense.
Yes.
Technically, there were more than 10 of us, and technically the local government had decided you couldn't gather in groups of more than 10, which is insane.
A colleague of mine told me the same thing where neighbors called because they were walking outside and counted how many cars and how many people were going into a house and wanted to, I mean, some people would fit in really well in East Germany.
Oh,
this is one of the terrible, disappointing things that happened after COVID, during COVID, which was finding out that rather than people pushing back saying, we're not going to put up with this for more than a couple months, a lot of people were very docilely like, I'll go along with this.
Oh,
I was scolded for taking 2 steps back in the other direction in a supermarket aisle, and it wasn't even a narrow aisle. It was at a Safeway. It was crazy.
I'm even disappointed in myself a little bit because I bought this BS for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. I was like,
don't go out,
maybe
hold your breath.
Maybe this is the way you do. Nope.
Yeah.
No, that was not the way to deal with it. And the thing about all of this is that the history of public policy and the plans that former administrations had formulated for pandemics were not about lockdowns. This was a new thing introduced by totalitarian China to the menu of options for things you could do to fix this. We didn't know whether it would work. It was not in line with recommendations of the past, which were more like the Great Barrington Declaration, which was to keep things as normal as possible for a bunch of people. Anyway, a bunch of people got hurt in ways that had nothing to do with the virus because people ignored that was a possibility. And it makes me sad that largely because we want to move past it and people don't want to think about it, there's not going to be a giant reckoning on this. Like I've sort of understood that that's where we are. And that is problematic because what happens next time? They can just say, oh, look, we're going to do it again.
Yeah.
We're going to do it again. Yeah. I think fewer people will put up with it, but I don't know.
I'm not holding my breath. You'd like to think that. You'd like to think that there's enough of us who are going to say enough. But, nah.
As a counter to the gaslighting, here's Ron DeSantis on the stump this week just saying, hey, this is like a real thing that the federal government did.
So, like, for example, we never mandated masks in Florida. They did it in some of the local communities. So then I came in and I banned them from being able to enforce mask mandates. And I pardoned everybody who our local governments imposed any penalty on for any violation of COVID protocols. But yes, this was driven by Washington. And, you can look and say, like, obviously, California had lengthy lockdowns. You look at, like, a Georgia. Georgia opened very quickly. Donald Trump attacked Georgia for opening the economy. You look at Florida. We became the epicenter of freedom. Everyone all over the world was coming to vacation or to live in the state. So you had radically different views or radically different approaches. But I don't think any of the states would have done that without the Trump administration pushing that.
See, in a world where there was a reckoning, that message would resonate with Republican voters who were highly skeptical of lockdowns, but they're not highly skeptical of Trump's performance.
Right. That's the problem, because it is a great message, right? And it's a great message because the person delivering it was the governor of a very large state who was able to make. He's not just someone. We can say the same thing, but they're going to say, well, you weren't president, or you weren't. You're not in a position.
No, he actually did the
what
thing.
did you do? And he actually did it, and he was attacked for it. And everyone called him Death Santis. And anytime you showed pictures of the openness, all the critics were like, "You're killing people right there. You're killing everybody." There was also this element of hoping.
Oh, I know.
That they
a
would,
lot,
yeah,
very
a lot of people.
Thinly veiled
Right,
hope.
right. That they
enthusiasm.
so that they can be vindicated.
There was the
to that extent.
Atlantic headline: Georgia's experiment in human sacrifice.
Yeah, that is amazing.
But you know what? Here's the thing that is never really dealt with, at least on a national level, certainly not in national media. If Collins got it wrong with this bad calculation, this immature calculation that he made, I would say, guess who got it right? DeSantis and Kemp.
Yeah.
Kristi Noem.
Yeah.
They got it right, and you got it wrong. But is there any punishment for those who got it wrong, or reward for those who got it right? Not very much. Not very much in either direction.
No. Again, it's a shame because the vehicle who's delivering this message is actually, the vehicle is stalling.
I know.
And
Tis true. We are on the Iowa countdown, my friend.
Oh my goodness.
We are in January now. The slow motion train wreck that is the race to the bottom 2024 is well underway at this point. People will actually vote, and we'll see what they do. In the meantime, we do have some Trump news. We're going to save that because there's a lot of it.
Yeah.
But Nikki Haley ran into a bit of a gaffe this week.
She did.
Did you hear this one?
What was the cause of the United States Civil War?
I mean, I think it always comes down to the role of government and what the rights of the people are. And I will always stand by the fact that I think government was intended to secure the rights and freedoms of the people. It was never meant to be all things to all people. Government doesn't need to tell you how to live your life. They don't need to tell you what you can and can't do. They don't need to be a part of your life.
In the year 2023, it's astonishing to me that you answer that question without mentioning the word slavery.
What do you want me to say about slavery?
Well, so obviously a mistake here. Do I think that this is because she harbors like secret pro-slavery thoughts in her heart? No, I do not. No, I do not. Yeah. But it is an unforced error.
Do you think that she panicked because she didn't want to offend certain elements, perhaps of the party, or if you want to put your tinfoil hat on and say perhaps because she's trying to get ready and curry favor with a certain other leading candidate and become that candidate's running mate?
Well, okay.
I'm not saying I believe that. I'm just saying.
Well, yeah. So those are
saying.
Many people are saying. But the issue with the sort of trying not to offend, let's say it would be a Confederate sympathizing Trumpy wing,
the neo-Confederate
of the
wing,
vote,
yes.
right? Okay, so say
we're
that's,
talking about this is the primaries.
Say that's who you're after. I don't think that's her job right now. Her job is to win in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And to consolidate not that part of the party. Right?
Yeah, which is
that's a reach for her.
And generally, New Hampshire is a pro-union state.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. That's not the people she needs to be targeting.
Trying to get into her mind, of course. I do think that she panicked about how do I explain this without just being forthright and saying, slavery was this issue. People feel very strongly about this. I remember, this is way back in the 90s now, I gave when I would give a tour of Georgetown. I was a tour guide for Georgetown University. And I talked about how they kept the Constitution in the basement of the building, the main Healy building, during the Civil War. And a parent corrected me and said, "You mean the war between the states? There was nothing civil about it." And I said, "Okay."
She didn't call it the Wall of Northern Aggression.
Yeah, I was surprised he didn't say that. I do remember him saying, at least we had a compromise. It was between the states. That's true.
Drop that clip in my Oppo research now.
Yeah.
The fact that
and the other thing I was reminded of, Mary Katharine, was sometimes, again, when they panic about answers in this. And I know this is supposedly the person was a plant, right? Whatever.
Yeah, but who cares?
It doesn't matter, right?
You
should
have to
be
take
able to
those
answer
questions, yeah.
the question. And she, it's again crazy. I was reminded, and George H.W. Bush, who I absolutely love. Many years ago, he was asked a question about when his plane. Remember, he flew the Navy plane,
right?
And it crashed in the Pacific,
right.
Near Chichijima, and he was floating in the Pacific for a while, which was a scary thing because the Japanese caught him, they would have killed him, tortured him, killed him. It would have been awful. So he was asked, "What was going through your mind when you were floating there in the Pacific?" And he said, "I thought about Mother and Dad and the strength I got from them, and God and faith, and the separation of church and state." Because he had panicked after mentioning God and faith. Like, oh my gosh, yes, he was.
It's such a beautiful answer up
yeah,
until then.
I know. Today it would work, and the idea that you had to mention church and state while you were floating in the Pacific is probably not. Some people make these gaffes.
Yeah, I think.
I don't think Trump is going to go after her for that.
No,
though.
no. In the case of this one and the one about the internet, sort of anonymity and how she wants to get rid of that.
Everyone's names. Yeah.
On both occasions, her gaffes feel like I'm mystified as to how they came to be.
Yeah.
Because she's generally a good talker.
No,
that's one of her strong suits.
Yeah, yeah. She's well seasoned by this
and so
point.
in both of those cases, I've been very confused about why this happened, and I obviously
that's a weird gaff.
Correct answer is slavery. And you can add context to that if you wish to, but you gotta say the thing and then do a broader answer. Because far be it from me, as a public talker, to say that when someone asks you what could be a complex question, that you can only give a one-word answer. Right. That is not the case, but you do have to do the important part, and then switch to the other thing you want to talk about. Which politicians do all the time.
She wanted to then loop herself back into a talking point that she's practiced over and over.
Yes,
so
and she, by the way, walked this back and said, of course this is about slavery.
Yeah.
I just want to note the DeSantis answer, which he gave on the trail, of course, being quite teed up for this because now he knows it's coming. He says, of course you have the issue of slavery. You have the states that were concerned about Lincoln interfering and potentially eliminating it, and they viewed it as a states' rights issue, not a federal issue. And they were concerned that you have this Republican president may come in and get rid of the institution of slavery. It's interesting because the Republican Party was founded to put a stop to the growth of slavery in this country, and the abolition of slavery was, to this day, remains the party's top achievement. So
which immediately, I think the media had to cut the feed. They didn't want him there at that point. Don't remind them that Abraham Lincoln was a Republican.
But there you have it. That's one of the battle lines drawn, so to say. This week. Let's play Nikki Haley restating. Okay. So that we don't leave that out. In the interest of fair time.
The Civil War was about slavery. We know that. That's unquestioned, always the case. We know the Civil War was about slavery. But it was also more than that. It was about the freedoms of every individual.
That backtrack is courtesy of MSNBC, by the way. I don't know why they make it so dramatic.
Yes. No.
But yeah, so that's the way you do that.
Right.
And again, she's normally quite good at such things.
Yeah.
Anyway, they're both going to lose anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Except for maybe New Hampshire.
Yeah. That's true.
Or, barring an Iowa miracle. Stranger things have happened in Iowa.
I've always been very skeptical of people who want to put all their eggs in one basket, and the basket is Iowa. Yeah. Because even if they win it, it doesn't necessarily steamroll into New Hampshire, South Carolina.
Well, you can ask President Rick Santorum and President Pete Buttigieg about this.
I was going to say President Pete Buttigieg. But for Nikki, it will be interesting if she can get New Hampshire and then take South Carolina. Right. Then we'll see.
But then if she doesn't take South Carolina, that's her home state.
Then it's time to be running mate.
Oh,
okay.
Right.
You wanted to do this was
President Vivek. Anyway.
Yeah. That's true.
Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about just an update on the Israel versus Hamas conflict. But in particular, and I don't want to get into a lot of details because you guys can read them if you want to. It's very hard to read, much less to consider that there is video and photographic evidence of all of this.
The people who need to and should are not the people who are going to,
right.
Is the thing.
But there was a New York Times investigation that they have worked on for several months about just a content warning. If you guys are listening with kids, you can pause it here or skip ahead. Sexual violence as a tool of war in this attack on October 7th. They tracked down eyewitnesses who in particular were at the Nova Music Festival and saw these acts happen. They talked to volunteer rescue and and professional soldiers who went into the kibbutzim right after this and were witness to the state of bodies upon their recovery and testified to the way they were treated, which made sexual violence quite obvious and grotesque and horrifying in many cases. There are several survivors of sexual violence who have spoken to investigators. The irony of all this, Chris, is because there's all these naysayers who say, oh no, Hamas would never engage in such things, which is just insane.
Right.
Particularly because they taped themselves engaged in horrific things. But because so many of the victims ended up dead, you do have fewer testimonies to this. You do have less evidence, particularly because the Jewish people bury their dead very quickly.
Right.
There are some rescuers and those who recovered bodies in this piece who express regret for not having taken more evidence, but the reason they didn't is because they are trained to treat the dead with respect. Right? So it's a very tricky situation. Nonetheless, there is lots of evidence that this is what Hamas was engaged in. So the naysayers be damned.
That's what I find also disturbing, is how little remorse these people have for it. And it's like they want it always, right? So on the one hand, and I remember this because I saw a rally myself when I was down in Dallas on October 8th. They were celebrating the attack on the kibbutzim, the break out of Gaza, and then they deny that they had done anything wrong at the same time, and they didn't treat any of these people badly, if you remember this. Or they'll also say, well, the IDF has been doing this since, 1948, not as a matter of policy. And this thing with the defiling and these atrocities were premeditated.
Yes.
And again, you mentioned about the body cams taping this. So then they're now denying something that they were actually proud of and celebrating when they realize that the world reaction is not going to be, this is great, or it's understandable, it's war. And, you have to get into their mindset about how they feel, and this is why they did what they did. And I keep on talking about this, but it's like sort of like Iranian regime Holocaust deniers who, on the one hand, like to say that Hitler is a great man, and on the other hand, they say the Holocaust didn't happen. He was great for doing the thing that he wanted to do, but he didn't actually do it. But if he did do it, he'd be great, No, and these people are the same.
No, it's so dark and it's so horrifying. And the fact that, look, in this case, we have quite a bit of digital video evidence, digital photos, messages and WhatsApps from people who would end up dying, testifying to what was happening around them. And yet this is still called not evidence enough.
Right.
What? And this is the thing about denialism.
What do you have to see?
What would you need to see?
Nothing.
And by the way, had this happened in 2009, this exact same thing, how much less evidence would there be? Because in 2009, we didn't carry around phones that readily videotaped or took good photos. What would have been your response in 1973 when there would have been no portable video and very little photographic evidence, right? So that gets to the heart of the denialism, which is that they don't want to believe, so they're not going to believe.
Yeah. And they're not going to look at
But
this.
I appreciate
propaganda. It's all Hollywood anyway, it was all.
And again, I'm going to pull a little bit of a Francis Collins characterization for the New York Times. I appreciate that they did this work. And also, I would just like to point out when it's Christine Blasey Ford or Jussie Smollett, the first move is not to investigate the facts for 2 months. The first move is to say,
yes,
believe, and anyone else who doesn't
Julie Swetnick
it's a bad person.
Yeah.
So it's just the amount of evidence needed for different cases is disparate.
Yeah.
So there's a different standard, Vic. Yeah. I've noticed. If you squint, you will notice too that there's a different standard. Okay. I believe the Wall Street Journal also did an investigation. So if you wish to bear witness to these things, you can
Yes.
Look up both of those. They are very hard reading, so watch out. An update from Argentina.
Oh.
Do you remember that the libertarian wild man was elected there?
Javier Milei.
Yes, Javier Milei, who's just an interesting character in many ways. He has cloned dogs.
Yes.
He is not Jewish, but says he wants to convert to Judaism.
Yes.
He seems to be quite a down the line actual libertarian. Not. It's interesting because anyone who is charismatic in front of a camera and has crazy hair is called Trumpian, but he's very not Trumpian because he has very clear ideologies and ideas about what the government should be. And his idea largely is that overregulation has ruined his country, and he would like to work on deregulating it. So he put forth a 351-page bill, including 664 articles, aimed at deregulating and modifying laws pertaining to several sectors: labor, commercial, real estate, aeronautics, and health. According to Milei, the omnibus bill contains 2/3 of his reform proposals. Quote, Argentina is immersed in a serious and deep economic, financial, fiscal, social, pension, security, defense, tariff, energy, health, and social crisis without precedent, which affects all levels of society and the very functioning of the state. He just wants to slash. He wants to slash a lot of that nonsense.
If he has enough of the backing of the people, they like him enough, much like with Ronald Reagan, he may be able to get a lot of this stuff through out of pressure from the constituents, because they'll all start to complain to their local representative leaders. Why don't you do what this great president wants you to do? And that might work, even if he's dealing with a powerful opposition party.
Well, and I will say one of the provisions here, he would gain more powers on a temporary basis, and we're a little bit wary of that after COVID, to get rid of regulations circumventing Congress in some areas due to a public emergency situation.
Yeah.
But largely, he wants to take power out of the federal government. Right. And this is the way that he would attempt to do that.
The very enormous bureaucracy that, of course, is what, for every large sort of government in the free world, is what drains it. You know, he also had the chainsaw.
Oh, I missed the chainsaw.
And yes, he brought it to his to his announcement because he's going to cut through.
Yep.
And that reminded me of Arnold Schwarzenegger in Sacramento. His office when he was governor. He had the Conan Barbarian sword.
I love it.
Yeah.
I just read his book, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Be useful. Be useful. Not his autobiography. Not the first.
Yeah.
Right. This is sort of a.
All right.
He would not like this comparison, but a Jordan Peterson-esque rules for living.
Rules for.
Yeah. And I listened to it on audiobook, and it's as good as you would imagine.
How well does he read? Does he talk? Is it
yes, it's amazing.
Good. That's key.
How would you not have Arnold do his own book?
Yeah, very good. Did you? How often does he say, "Do it now"? How often does he say that?
He uses a lot of catchphrases.
Yeah,
it's very satisfying, and the lessons are good. The lessons are good.
To be
but
or not to be.
I like an outrageous prop in my political rhetoric to assist the political rhetoric. In fact, we should get one for Getting Hammered. Is it just a beer? It'd probably just be a beer. Anyway, but I like that. I like the chainsaw. Very stylish. Yeah. Conan's sword, great. Another one, a famous one, was Mark Sanford when he was running for governor of South Carolina. Mm-hmm. In his capacity as a state leader, or was it as the governor? Whichever. He brought piglets to the floor of the assembly, who I believe defecated on the floor at one point. Pork and barrel.
Oh, yeah. Got it. Yeah,
as a symbol of what he was
and
trying to cut.
And this is before Mark Sanford went to Argentina.
That's correct.
So full circle.
It all came
comes together. Yeah.
That's right. On his special Appalachian Trail hike in Argentina.
I didn't know the trail goes all the way down there.
You know what it does? Yeah. There's a whole mountain range. It goes
from Appalachia all the way down to Buenos Aires.
Yeah, if you guys don't remember that scandalo, you have to look that one up. Scandalo of Mark Sanford, who was missing for a while, and it turned out he was with his mistress in South America.
Friend.
All right, so Milei, good luck to you, my friend. He's going to privatize some companies. The thing about this is that in a place like Argentina, where things have not been going well, to the extent that they elect a very out-and-out libertarian, nonetheless, the bad status quo will be given lots of credit, and his big changes
Will be
any
just
disruption.
terrible.
It's like the opposite of the public health thing.
Yeah.
All of his changes have zero value.
Yeah.
And the infinite value is in maintaining the
That's right.
status quo ante. So we'll see how this is judged and how it works out. But I do not think the press will be friendly about it.
No.
But I hope for prosperity
We
for
might.
the Argentinians.
Yes.
We'll see. All right. Pizza Hut news.
Let's do it.
This is more mistakes in liberal policy setting. Here we go.
Get
Oops.
into the Pizzone, by the way. Remember the Pizzone? It was supposed to be pizza.
Pizzone.
Was it supposed to be Pizza Zone? Is that what it
Yes.
meant? Get into the Pizzone.
Pizza Hut is set to lay off more than 1,200 delivery drivers in Los Angeles, Orange, and Riverside counties in the coming year, ahead of a new law that boosts the fast food minimum wage by $4 to $20 per hour. The law, known as Assembly Bill 1228, was introduced by Assemblyman Chris Holden of Pasadena and signed into law in September, and no one could have seen this coming. Pizza Hut franchises are prepared to pivot toward third-party apps like DoorDash, Grubhub, and Uber Eats for pizza and food deliveries. This, of course, because instead of having a lot of overhead for $20 an hour delivery drivers, you funnel that off to a gig economy situation, which is what the likes of the guy who proposed this bill are complaining about all the time.
Oh, yeah. They're always trying to go after the gig
Right?
economy.
And then you make it impossible
Yeah.
for an
And now you're
organization
stuck
to
with it.
operate
Right.
without using them.
Yeah.
So,
And
well done.
who knows how warm. I'm not a. Are you a. If I have a choice between pickup and delivery, I'm almost always pickup
Oh, really?
because I like to
Interesting.
get. I don't know how long it's been on the road for. That's, I mean, they're driving around.
That's
Unless it's a driver.
Real pizza snob over here.
Unless it's a driver directly from the place.
Can I give you an update, a pizza update
Yeah.
on the Newark train station? Remember where I had my pizza?
Sure.
I was talking to New Jersey native Guy Benson
Oh, yes.
about this, or not native, but grew up in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Son of New Jersey, about this, and he said that actually is a very good place. He goes there.
Oh.
He goes through that train station to watch the Devils play, and he always has a piece of pizza there because it's pretty good. So anyway,
It's
y'all
fantastic.
go check
Oh,
that
my
out.
mouth is
Anyway,
watering. I will
okay.
say this about Pizza Hut. Again, we're talking about the unintended consequences. I think in their. So it's like, what are they thinking? Don't they know by now? Didn't they take, micro, macro,
No,
economics,
none of them have. No one knows
trade,
any of
finance?
Read a Thomas
These
Sowell book.
Unintended consequences in their minds, right? Why are they doing this? Because in their minds they think, well, raise it to 20, and they're not going to pass on that cost to the consumers, or they're not going to lay off
just mean old
people.
Pizza Hut.
What they're going to do is they're going to make less money for themselves. They just need to make less. I think that's the mentality. Stephanie Rule, I've mentioned this before, of MSNBC, got on small business owners who said they need to make less in order to help other people rise up. So we can all make the same amount, except for her, because I think she probably makes more than the small
Could
business
Stephanie
owner.
make less so I could make more?
Yeah.
Please, Stephanie?
Oh, by the way, and please, can I just say this? If anyone is listening who is in power at a Pizza Hut somewhere, to bring back, I want a retro Pizza Hut. The Pizza Hut, we can go inside.
I was going to discuss this. This is happening.
What?
In some places.
Oh, where?
Yes.
Please
okay.
tell me near me.
Hold on. We need crowdsourced help on this one because
Okay.
there aren't very many, but there are some. Just as a side note, real quick before we finish the economic discussion, several Pizza Hut franchises planning to lay off 841 drivers.
Yikes.
So the problem, and I appreciate this story, which comes from CBS News. The problem with these ideas is that the upfront benefits of $20 an hour theoretically sound great and get a lot of coverage because up front you can be like, look what we're doing for these workers. And there is very little coverage usually of those who lose, who are often this type of worker. So I'm glad that they're covering them. But we could have seen this coming. On the Pizza Hut front, there is at least one in North Carolina, and I saw one on Twitter the other day that advertises itself as a retro Pizza Hut. And I haven't.
You go there after the football game,
Yes.
the high school football
So we
game.
drove past it on the way to Steve's parents' house one time, and I haven't been able to place where it was.
Oh, my
so I'm going to
goodness.
continue my
I
research
wonder if they
on
still wear
this.
the old uniforms. That would be great.
Well,
What would you get if you go in there?
Well, I want a salad bar. Obviously.
You know, let me warn you about the salad bar, Mary Katharine, because at least in Tom's River, the old Pizza Hut, the salad bar, you can only go once. So you have to load up your plate.
Oh,
You
really?
can't go back. It's not all you can eat.
So
Got to make money
I love
somehow.
I love an 80s salad bar.
Yeah.
Okay. And I thought that all the bars would be
Yeah.
gone after COVID, but they're not. We still have some salad bars. We still have breakfast buffets. I'm
Good.
glad to report
With a little
that they
sneeze
exist.
guard.
So when I was a child and I would go to Pizza Hut, we would go every Tuesday night because I believe it was like Kids Eat Free or
Yes.
something. I would go with my friend Emily's family, and it was great fun. with the red plastic cups and the Pac-Man.
Oh, and also, yeah, video games. Oh, by the way, you're playing on that joystick, and then you go in and eat the food with your
it's
bare hands.
fantastic,
Yeah, nobody's
fantastic.
washing their hands. It's oil is everywhere.
But when I was a child, salad bars had like chocolate pudding.
No,
on them.
they didn't. Oh,
Yes,
come
they
on.
did. Yes, they did. This was the
No.
thing. In every salad
Oh my
bar,
gosh.
I would get a salad.
Yeah, that's
'Cause
not a
I
salad.
could eat
What is
well.
that? Okay. Yeah.
I would get a salad. I was a mature child, and for some reason I always put sunflower seeds on top of my salad. That was my crunch. You gotta have some crunch in your salad.
I just do croutons.
But there was always chocolate pudding. Back me up on this, people. When you hear this, you're going to be like, yes, obviously, Vic, there was chocolate pudding on a salad
at the
bar.
Pizza Hut salad bar?
Yeah.
Wow. You know what I remember? They had alfalfa sprouts. I'm like, but my mother used to do
gosh.
that. Yeah.
Well, that was, you
And
were living
you get
in
that like creamy Italian
high
dressing.
high times
yeah,
over
high
here in New
times
Jersey
in
Pizza
Tom's
Hut.
River. Yeah, yeah. No, I would just get a nice deep dish. Ready for this? It's crazy. It's the Super Supreme, which has so many toppings it actually tastes like nothing. But it's because there's like a million things going on.
That's a metaphor for something.
Yeah, it is. But I missed that, and you would pair that with their Pepsi. I think it was Pepsi products. And you get a picture of Pepsi, and it was such a great pairing. Yeah.
That's good times.
Probably
those
why
personal pan.
Probably why I'm pre-diabetic.
Yeah,
but-
those personal pan pizzas were
the
so
pizza.
good.
But if you want personal pan, it's almost all bread now. Okay,
Yes, but
the
it's
whole thing is
good.
bread.
It's toasty.
You need like a big one, a big pizza, because then it gets in there with the cheeses, and also
I didn't like that motion you made. You
like
can see that on
in there?
YouTube.
I'm sorry, I was thinking of Doc Hollywood. The other thing was you can get the garlic bread with the melted cheese on it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I love a personal pan pizza because it was crispy around the edges. It's soft inside. It was great stuff. And like I read a lot of books as a child, so I earned a lot of personal pan pizzas
There
as
you
part of
go.
the Book It program.
Look at that.
All right. Last thing.
Last.
Maybe the best highlight of the bowl season, since the University of Georgia Bulldogs are destined not to win the national championship
But
this
congratulations anyway
Thank you.
for
We did-
dismantling
year.
Florida State.
Yeah, we sent a message on that one.
Yeah.
Highest margin of victory
Yeah.
in bowl history. Fast Company reports, who knew eating your mascot on live TV would help drive sales? That's precisely the gamble the marketing team behind Pop-Tarts took during a college football bowl game Thursday. Pop-Tarts, that family breakfast staple, was among the brands that recently split off from Kellogg's as part of a new corporate entity called Kellanova. I did not know this.
Interesting. I didn't know it either.
Last year, this was the Cheez-It Bowl. This year, it was the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And what happened was they had a cheery Pop-Tart mascot smiling around the field,
Frosted, right?
living his
Frosted.
best
Yeah,
life. And at the end of the game, he went into a giant toaster.
Yeah, like the end of Terminator 2.
Yes, with a little
Yeah.
slowly lowered
Ah.
with a sign that said "Dreams really do come true," which then he tossed as he
Threw it away, the
as he
sign.
went down all the way to his death ceremonially for the winning team, and then he came out the bottom as
They made a giant.
an edible giant Pop-Tart, at which point the winning team, which is escaping me right at the moment, they beat NC State.
Yeah.
Sorry,
It's
Wolfpack.
escaping me too because I just saw the clip.
The winning team got to feast on the giant edible
Yeah.
Pop-Tart. And I have one note. Everybody's like, this is gruesome, but they really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Like it was a
Yeah.
very strange, there were memes galore. I have one note.
Yeah.
Which is that when the Pop-Tart came out toasted,
Yes.
ready to
Yes.
be consumed, he was winking, like still with a smile. And I think they should have gone out. He should all out and had X's over his
X's
eyes.
over the eyes. I mean, no, it's too much. I can't handle it.
Dead
There were
Pop-Tart.
shades of Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in that. You know, kind of
Yeah.
happy and being melted.
Look, I'm proud of him. He
A brilliant marketing. The marketing agency gets props because sometimes these things don't work out. But I thought this was very.
I mean,
obviously, it was all over social
they
media.
really had a
the
moment. Okay,
memes.
last question before we close out this
Yes.
episode. Frosted Pop-Tart or plain
A
Pop-Tart?
frosted. You might as well go all out. If you think that you're
This is incorrect.
don't kid yourself that you're getting a healthier option without the frost. Do you put the frosting on because it comes with a packet, right? Isn't that
Oh, it doesn't come with a packet.
Isn't it the little thing that comes? What am I talking
What in the
about?
fancy toaster strudel
You know what
hell
I'm
are you
talking about?
talking
There was a
about?
plastic packet, and you put the
No,
icing
again,
on it.
Again,
What is? Isn't that? Isn't that
Dr.
Pop-Tarts?
Matus was living high on the hog
Isn't-
and getting his kids toaster strudels.
Isn't that with the? Isn't
No,
that? Am I thinking of
Pop-Tarts-
something else?
Pop-Tarts come with a cement layer
Oh
of
yeah,
frosting
I've had that
already
too.
on
Yeah,
that.
I'll take that too.
Okay.
Oh.
I'm anti-frosting.
What?
It's much better without it, in my estimation, and I know I'm in the minority. I just like a plain-ass blueberry Pop-Tart, and I'll throw some butter on the top of it instead of the frosting. And by the way, when I was pregnant, that was a frequent meal in my home.
Just having the toasted pop. That's like me wanting the Twix biscuit without the chocolate and caramel. Like, okay.
It is a little bit. Look, I cop to it being a minority view.
When was the
it's
last time you had a
correct one.
Pop-Tart?
It's been a while, but now I want one, which is what they succeeded in doing.
Do you remember the movie Mean Girls?
Yes.
And do you remember Lacey Chabert's character, Gretchen Wiener?
Yes.
Who claimed that her father was the inventor of Pop-Tarts.
Kansas State, by the way, was the winner of that.
Oh, okay.
So
Well,
congratulations,
to
guys.
Kansas
And I
State.
hope you enjoyed your Pop-Tart. Okay.
On that note, that wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Victorina Matus.
I'm at MKHammer on Twitter, at MKHammerTime on Instagram. Follow the show at Getting Hammered Podcast on Instagram or YouTube, and you can see all the motions that Vic makes. Thank you for getting hammered responsibly. This has been a Nebulous Media Podcast. All right.